Lawyers, what's the biggest mistake you've seen someone make in court? Back in the early 1990s, there was this guy who got caught up in some serious trouble. The police said he robbed someone with a weapon, but he told everyone he didn't do it. So they had to go to court to figure out what really happened. During the trial, a person who saw the robbery was telling the judge and jury what they remembered. This witness pointed at the guy and said, "That's him! He's the one who robbed me." Now here's where things got really crazy. The guy who was accused couldn't help himself. He jumped up from his chair, his face all red with anger. He shouted at the witness, "I should have blown your head off when I had the chance." As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized what he'd done. The whole courtroom went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. The guy's brain finally caught up with his mouth, and he tried to fix his mistake. He quickly added, if I had been the one who robbed you, I mean. But it was too late. Everyone had heard what he said. He basically told on himself in front of everybody. It's hard to say you didn't do something when you yell about how you should have hurt the person you supposedly didn't rob. Talk about a facepalm moment. Story 2. One day, I got to watch a really interesting court case. It was about a woman who hurt her leg in an accident and wanted money for her injury. To help prove her case, her lawyer brought in a doctor to talk about leg injuries. Now this wasn't just any doctor. He was a big deal in town, known for fixing bones. The woman's lawyer started asking him questions, trying to show how smart he was about legs, but things didn't go quite how she planned. She asked the doctor, "Have you ever treated a tibia fracture?" The doctor just said, "No." This seemed to make the lawyer happy. She thought she caught him not knowing something important. So she kept going, asking more and more questions about this tibia thing. She was getting pretty worked up, thinking she was making the doctor look bad. After a bunch of questions, she finally went for what she thought was the big finish. She said, all dramatic like, "How did you even get to be a doctor if you've never treated a tibia fracture? Maybe we need to look into who gave you your doctor badge." The whole room was quiet. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Then, cool as a cucumber, the doctor said something that changed everything. There is no bone called a tibia. Boom. Just like that, the lawyer's whole plan fell apart. See, the bones in your leg are actually called the tibia and the fibula. The lawyer had mixed them up and made up a new bone. The lawyer's face turned bright red, like a tomato. You could tell she wanted to disappear right then and there. Everyone else in the room, the judge, the jury, even the people watching, they were all trying so hard not to laugh. Their faces were scrunched up, holding back giggles. Story 3. I used to work at a lawyer's office, and boy did we see some crazy stuff. This one time, we had this guy come in with a wild story. He said he fell down at work and hurt himself all over, his shoulder, his knees, even his back. It sounded pretty bad. Now, whenever we get cases like this, we always tell people to be careful about what they post online, just in case. We told this guy the same thing, and he was like, "No problem. I don't even use social media." We thought, great, one less thing to worry about. So the day of the trial comes. This guy is in front of the judge telling his sad story. He says, I used to teach spin classes, those super intense bike workout classes. But since I got hurt, I can't do that anymore. It's really messed up my life. The judge is nodding, probably feeling pretty sorry for the guy. But then things took a wild turn. See, what our guy didn't know was that the insurance company had been watching him. Not in a creepy way, but to make sure he wasn't lying about being hurt. And boy, did they hit the jackpot. They had videos, hours and hours of them, showing this guy teaching spin classes. There he was, riding that bike like his life depended on it, shouting instructions to his class. He definitely didn't look like someone who was too hurt to work. Now, you're probably wondering, how did the insurance company know to look for him at a spin class? Well, here's the kicker. Remember how he said he didn't use social media? Turns out that wasn't exactly true. He had a Facebook page where he posted his entire teaching schedule. So there he was, caught red-handed. He thought he was going to get a big pile of money for his injuries. Instead, he ended up in big trouble for lying to the court. It went from him possibly getting lots of cash to him possibly having to pay a big fine or even go to jail for fraud. The lesson here? Always tell the truth, especially in court. And maybe think twice before posting your whole life online. You never know who might be watching. Story 4. So I'm a lawyer, and I had this case that turned into a real mess. It was about a hit and run. You know, when a car hits someone and then speeds off without stopping to help. My job was to help the person who got hit. Now, the day before we had to go to court, I spent hours and hours talking with my client. We went over everything that happened, again and again. I wanted to make sure she was ready to tell her story to the judge. But when we got to court, oh boy, it was like all that practice just flew out the window. My client couldn't remember anything. I'm talking basic stuff, like the name of the street where she got hit. And this wasn't some tiny back alley. It was a big, busy highway. I was sitting there thinking, come on, we just went over this yesterday. Then things went from bad to worse. The other lawyer, the one defending the person who hit my client, pulled out a picture. It was of my client, all dressed up fancy like she was ready to go dancing at a club. The lawyer said the picture was posted on Facebook the day after the accident. Now, I thought I was being clever. I jumped up and said, hold on, just because it was posted then doesn't mean that's when the picture was taken. I thought I had saved the day. But then the other lawyer did something I didn't expect. He showed the picture to my client and asked her when it was taken. And you know what she said? She told everyone it was taken the day after the accident, the very day she was supposed to be in so much pain she could barely move. I felt my stomach drop. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, but the car was our case, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. All I could think was, oh no, this is bad. This is really, really bad. See, we had been telling everyone how badly hurt she was, how much pain she was in. But there she was, admitting she was out partying right after the accident. It made it look like she was lying about everything. Story 5. So this guy got into some trouble with the law. He was part of a drag race, you know, one of those illegal car races on the street. He wasn't even the one driving, but his buddy crashed and someone got hurt real bad. Because he was involved, the judge gave him a short sentence. We're talking maybe a year or 2 in prison. Now, most people would just keep their head down, do their time, and get out. But not this guy. Oh no, he had to go and do something really dumb. He was almost done with his sentence when he got this bright idea to try and escape from prison. I mean, come on. He was so close to getting out the right way. But I guess he just couldn't wait. Well, let me tell you, that was a big mistake. Huge. When they caught him, and they always catch you, the judge wasn't playing around. They slapped him with another 9 years. Can you believe it? He went from being almost free to having to spend nearly a decade more behind bars, all because he couldn't sit still for a little bit longer. But here's where the story gets really weird. While he was doing all this extra time, he ended up in a prison in New York. And guess who he became buddies with? The guy who killed John Lennon. You know, from the Beatles. Story 6. Back when I was in college, I had this really interesting job as a bailiff in a courtroom. That means I got to see all kinds of wild stuff happen during trials. But there was this one murder trial that I'll never forget. So, picture this. The courtroom is packed, everyone's on edge, and this guy's on trial for killing someone. Things weren't looking good for him from the start. First, this lady gets up to testify. She looks right at the guy and says, "I saw him do it. He shot the victim." Everyone in the room gets real quiet. Then another person says the same thing. 2 people saw this guy shoot someone? That's pretty bad news for him. Next up is a police officer. He tells everyone that when he got to where it all happened, he found the guy just standing there, holding the gun. It's not looking any better for our guy on trial. Then comes the coroner. That's the doctor who figures out how people died. He starts talking about the bullets. He says the first bullet hit the victim in the arm. The second one hit him in the body. And the third one, right in the heart. That was the one that killed him. Now, you'd think the guy on trial would be sitting there all quiet, right? Nope, all of a sudden he jumps up and shouts, "See! That proves I didn't kill him. I only shot the guy twice." The whole courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. This guy just admitted to shooting someone, thinking it would somehow make him look innocent. It was like he thought, hey, I didn't shoot him 3 times, only twice, so I can't be the killer. But in real life, shooting someone even once is a huge deal. And he just told everyone he did it twice. I remember thinking, Did he really just say that? It was one of those moments where you want to laugh because it's so unbelievable, but you can't because it's actually really serious. Story 7. I went to court with my family member for a big decision about who would take care of their kid. The kid's mom had a new boyfriend and things got really messy. The mom told the judge that her new boyfriend was amazing. She said she trusted him totally and that he spent lots of nights at her house with her and the kid. She even let him watch the kid when she had to work. But then, the dad's lawyer found out some bad stuff about the boyfriend's past. The boyfriend got super mad when this came out. He started yelling and saying bad words to the judge. Can you believe it? Right there in the courtroom. The judge didn't like that one bit. After all that drama, the mom didn't end up getting to keep the kid. I guess the court thought the boyfriend wasn't as great as the mom said he was, especially after he acted so badly in front of everyone. Story 8. I'm not a lawyer, but I saw something crazy happen outside the store where I worked. There was this married couple fighting in the parking lot. They were in different cars, yelling at each other and making threats. It was pretty scary to watch. After a few minutes of this, we decided to call the police. Just as we did, the wife tried to leave in her car, but her husband wouldn't let her. He kept driving his car in front of hers, trying to make her stop. The police showed up just in time to see the husband do something really stupid. He crashed his car into his wife's car on purpose. He hit it so hard that her car went up onto the sidewalk. When the police came over to him, we could hear what he said. He yelled, it's okay, I own both cars." We couldn't believe how dumb this guy was. Did he really think that owning both cars made it okay for him to crash into his wife? Story 9. When I first became a lawyer, I had this really weird experience in court. I was helping a 19-year-old girl whose parents were rich. She had gotten into trouble for stealing stuff from stores, and we were trying to fix all her cases at once. Because I was new, I messed up some paperwork. I switched around some numbers on a form. It's an easy mistake, but it's still important to get it right. When the judge saw my mistake, he went crazy. He started yelling super loud, "What is this? Is this your first day on the job? We don't allow mistakes here. Fix this form right now or I'll throw you in jail." I was shocked. I didn't think he'd react like that at all. My client was sitting there in a pink velvet outfit, looking at me like I was the dumbest person ever. She seemed pretty out of it, like she'd been smoking something earlier. I fixed the form as fast as I could. The judge made me wait until everyone else was done before he'd look at my case again. I felt really embarrassed, but then something surprising happened. After everything was over, the judge called me up to talk privately. He said, "Sorry I yelled at you like that. I always pick on the youngest lawyer to make a point. Did you notice how all the other lawyers fixed their forms after I yelled at you? It helps keep things running smoothly." Then he invited me to his office for coffee. We talked about life and work, and he gave me some really good advice. It turns out he actually likes helping new lawyers learn the ropes. So what started as the most embarrassing day of my career turned into a weird but kind of cool learning experience. Story 10. We had this guy trying to get money from his job. He said he got hurt at work, and boy, did he go all out with his story. This guy claimed he hurt almost every part of his body. We're talking arms, legs, back, neck, you name it. He said it was injured. My law firm didn't believe him one bit. We thought he was making it all up. We were getting ready to go to court about it. The day before the trial, we decided to do one last check on the guy's social media. And guess what we found? This guy who said he was so badly hurt had posted a video of himself online. Now you'd think if he was really hurt, he'd be resting at home, right? Nope. The video showed him winning a breakdancing contest. And get this, the contest was just a few months after he said he got hurt at work. Breakdancing isn't easy. You have to be in really good shape to do all those spins and flips. There's no way someone with all the injuries this guy claimed could pull that off. When we showed this to the court, the case was over faster than you can say, busted. Story 11. I work as a paralegal, which means I help lawyers with their cases. One day I had this really strange conversation with a person who'd been found guilty of murder. This person had the craziest idea about why they shouldn't be in trouble for murder. They told me, totally serious, that their case should be thrown out. Why? Because the person they attacked didn't die right away. See, the victim was hurt really bad, but they didn't die at the place where the attack happened. Instead, they were taken to the hospital and died there later. So this person thought they had found some kind of loophole. They argued that since the victim didn't die right where the attack happened, it couldn't be called murder. They thought the most they should be charged with was attempted murder. Story 12. I was in court one day watching this really boring case. The lawyer defending the person in trouble was this old guy who talked so slowly you'd think he was trying to put everyone to sleep. The case was about drugs or something like that. The lawyer was asking the police officer who made the arrest a ton of questions. He was going on and on about every tiny detail. The judge kept telling him to hurry up, but he just kept droning on. The police officer was getting really annoyed, and you could see it on his face. Most people in the room left because it was so boring. I don't think anyone was really listening anymore. The lawyer kept asking about times, when the person was arrested, when they were put in jail, when they were let out. He asked so many questions that the officer started to zone out. Then the lawyer did something clever. He asked, "So my client was put in jail at 9:45 p.m. one night, right?" The officer said yes. "And he was let out the next night, right?" "Yes," again. "What time?" "After 10 p.m.? The officer, not really paying attention, said, "Yeah, maybe 10:15 p.m. Suddenly, everyone woke up. The lawyer had tricked the officer into admitting something important. In the UK, you can't keep someone in jail for more than 24 hours without charging them with a crime. But the officer had just said they kept the person for more than 24 hours. The lawyer stopped asking questions right then. The judge realized what happened and threw the whole case out. The person in trouble got to go free, all because the lawyer bored everyone so much that the officer stopped paying attention. It was like watching a magic trick. Story 13. So I got called for jury duty one day. If you don't know, that's when regular people like you and me help decide if someone's guilty in a court case. We were all sitting in the courtroom, and the lawyers were picking who would be on the jury. They asked if anyone thought they shouldn't be on the jury, for any reason. The person who was in trouble, we call them the defendant, was sitting right there in the room. I raised my hand because I knew something important. The lawyer defending the person in trouble looked at me like he was excited to hear what I had to say. He asked me to tell everyone why I raised my hand. I tried to be nice and said maybe I should tell them privately, but the lawyer insisted I say it out loud for everyone to hear. So I did. I said, well, I probably shouldn't be on this jury because I was on another jury before. It was for the same man, and we found him guilty that time. You should have seen the lawyer's face. He looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Everyone in the courtroom started talking at once. They had to stop everything to check if what I said was true. Turns out I was right. This was a big problem because now everyone in the room knew the defendant had been found guilty of something before. That's not fair in a new trial. So guess what happened? They had to send everyone home and start all over again with new people who didn't know about the defendant's past. Story 14. I once had a teacher who used to be a lawyer. He told us about this crazy case he had when he was working as a prosecutor. That's the lawyer who tries to prove someone did something wrong. My teacher thought he had a really easy case. He had a witness who saw everything that happened. This witness wanted to see the person in trouble get punished. My teacher thought he couldn't lose. But then something weird happened. When the witness got up to talk, she acted super strange. It was like she thought she was on a TV show or something. She didn't exactly lie, but she made everything way more dramatic than it really was. She talked about what happened like it was the most exciting thing ever. And the funny thing was, in her story, she made herself seem like the most important person there. My teacher said he could see the jury getting more and more annoyed as she kept talking. The jury is the group of people who decide if someone's guilty or not. They didn't like how the witness was acting at all. Even though the witness was telling the truth about what happened, the way she told it made everyone not believe her. It was too much like a TV show and not enough like real life. In the end, my teacher lost the case. The person he thought was definitely guilty got to go free. All because one witness got too excited and acted like she was a movie star instead of just telling what happened. Story 15. Let me tell you about this crazy thing that happened when I was on a jury. So we all showed up for the first day of the trial. The person who was in trouble, we call them the defendant, came into the courtroom, and guess what? He was wearing the exact same clothes as the person in the video who did the crime. Can you believe it? It's like he forgot he was coming to his own trial. As soon as people noticed, everything went nuts. The judge, who's in charge of the courtroom, stopped everything right away. It was so fast, like hitting pause on a video game. Then all the lawyers went into a back room with the judge. We were all sitting there wondering what was going on. It felt like forever, but it was really only about 7 minutes. When they came back out, the judge told us something surprising. The defendant had decided to take a plea deal. It was wild. 1 minute we're getting ready for a big trial, and the next minute it's all over because this guy wore the wrong outfit. Story 16. I used to have a job where I looked at people's disability claims. These are requests for money from people who say they can't work because of health problems. Often, these people have lawyers to help them. One day this guy called me up. He was really mad. His lawyer had told him not to talk to us directly, which is usually a smart idea. But this guy thought his lawyer was wrong, so he called anyway. He started yelling at me, saying he could do all sorts of things just fine. He said he could shop for groceries, mow the lawn, and do housework. No problem at all, he said. Now, I had seen this man's medical records, so I knew there was no way he could do all that stuff easily. Something didn't add up. So I asked him some more questions. Turns out, when he said he could shop for groceries, what he meant was he could ride one of those little scooters around the store while his wife did all the heavy lifting. When he said he could mow the lawn, he meant he used a riding mower and had to take long breaks every few minutes. And his housework was just wiping counters and folding some clothes. After we finished talking, I called his lawyer right away to tell them what happened. In the end, I approved his claim for disability. But let me tell you, this guy was so lucky I took the time to really listen to him. If I hadn't asked those extra questions, his angry call could have messed up his whole case. He thought he was proving he didn't need help, but he was actually showing just how much help he did need. Story 17. I'm not a lawyer, but I work with them. And boy, do I have a story for you about one of our clients that still makes my head spin. This guy was in a whole lot of trouble. He was charged with some pretty serious stuff, like hurting someone really badly and having illegal drugs. His family was super worried about him being in jail, so they begged us to help get him out. Getting someone out of jail before their trial is called getting bond. It's like a promise that the person will behave and show up to court later. Let me tell you, getting this guy bond was not easy. We worked really hard for weeks to make it happen. Finally, we did it. He got to go home and stay with his family until his court date. Now, you'd think this guy would be on his best behavior after all that, right? Nope, not even close. Guess what he did? Less than 1 day after getting out of jail, he got caught stealing from a store. And it wasn't even for something big or important. He tried to steal $16 worth of batteries from Target. Because of this, the judge said, "That's it," and sent him right back to jail. His bond was canceled, and all our hard work went down the drain. Sometimes it's hard to tell if people do dumb things because they can't help themselves or if they're just not thinking straight. With this guy, it could be either one. But man, talk about making a bad situation worse. It just goes to show, when you're given a second chance, you really need to make the most of it. This guy had his family fighting for him and a whole team of people working to help him out. And he threw it all away for some batteries. Wild, right? Story 18. My wife's a lawyer, and she told me about this crazy thing that happened to one of her coworkers. It changed how he does his job forever. This lawyer was helping a man sue someone because his wife had died. It wasn't just a normal death. Someone else was to blame. These kinds of cases usually end with the person getting a lot of money. The case was going great. They were just about to finish up and get the money. But then something went really wrong. The other side's lawyers found some pictures of the man online. These weren't just any pictures. They were from a club, and the man was there just a week after his wife died. In the pictures, he was getting a lap dance and wearing a shirt that said, "I love MILFs." When the other lawyers showed these pictures, it messed up the whole case. They said, "Look, this guy isn't suffering. He's out having a good time." After that, the lawyer decided he needed to change how he did things. Now he tells all his clients they can't use social media at all while he's working on their case. He doesn't want anyone else to mess up their case by posting the wrong thing online. Story 19. I'm not a lawyer, but I saw something pretty wild in court one day. I was watching people get restraining orders. There was this one case where a woman was in the courtroom, but the man she wanted the restraining order against was in prison. He was on the phone instead of being there in person. They figured out what the rules of the restraining order would be, and everything seemed done. But then the guy asked if he could make a statement. The judge said okay. At the end of what he said, the man told the judge to tell the woman to go F herself. The judge was not happy at all. He told the man off and added 6 months to his prison time. You'd think the guy would learn his lesson, right? Nope, he asked to say something else. And guess what? He did the exact same thing again. He told the woman to go do that same rude thing. The judge was super mad now. He gave the man another 6 months in prison. Can you believe it? This guy just added a whole year to his time in prison because he couldn't keep his mouth shut for 5 minutes. It's like when your parents tell you to be quiet and you keep talking anyway, but way, way worse. This guy's rudeness cost him a whole year of freedom. Story 20. There was this really messy fight over who should take care of a kid. I was helping one of the parents try to get their child back. The other parent was being really difficult and kept the kid away for weeks. They also kept trying to delay things in court. I asked the judge to make the other parent take a drug test. The judge said okay, but when the parent went to take the test, they just stood in front of the toilet for 2 whole hours. They said they couldn't pee, but we all knew that was probably not true. Since I was helping the parent who wanted their kid back, it was my job to prove the other parent wasn't fit to take care of the child. I brought in people who told the court they had seen the other parent using drugs. Then something crazy happened. The other parent's lawyer asked them a really dumb question in front of everyone. They said, "You don't use heroin and crack, right?" Now most people would just lie and say no, even if they did use drugs. But this parent took a long time to answer and then said, "Yes, I do both of those drugs." I couldn't believe it. I was so shocked, I didn't even ask any more questions. I didn't want to mess things up when the other parent had already admitted to using such dangerous drugs. In the end, I won the case. The parent I was helping got to keep their child, and now the kid is doing really well. Story 21. There was a really bad case about a group of people who hurt kids. One day they did something terrible, and a young boy died. One of the people involved said he was just watching and didn't actually hurt the boy himself. This person was allowed to stay out of jail while waiting for his trial. At first, he told one story about what happened, but then he changed his mind and said he wasn't even there when it happened. His sister told the court something different, though. She said he came home that night with blood all over him. This made people think he might have been more involved than he was saying. In the end, the court decided he was guilty of being part of what happened to the boy. Even though he said he didn't hurt the child himself, he was still there and didn't stop it. The judge gave him a very long time in prison because what happened was so awful. Story 22. When I was a teenager, I got into trouble with my friends for throwing eggs at cars. It wasn't the first time we'd done it, but it was the first time we got caught. We didn't have a big trial or anything. Instead, we just had to go to court to hear what our punishment would be. The judge called us up one by one to see if we had anything to say. I was nervous, but I knew it was best to be honest. Then it was my friend's turn. I couldn't believe what he said next. He told the judge he was a good kid who didn't usually do stuff like this. That was a lie. We'd done it loads of times before. But then he said something even dumber. He actually said, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. My other friend and I were sitting nearby, watching this happen. When we heard that, we both put our heads in our hands at the same time. We couldn't believe how stupid our friend was being. The judge wasn't happy at all. She reminded my friend that being in the wrong place at the wrong time doesn't involve going to a store, buying eggs, driving across town, and then throwing those eggs at cars on purpose. She made it clear that we had planned the whole thing and chosen to do it. I learned a big lesson that day. It's always better to own up to your mistakes and tell the truth. Trying to lie or make excuses to a judge is a really bad idea. They've heard it all before and can usually tell when someone's not being honest. In the end, we all got in trouble, but I think my friend who lied probably got the worst of it. The judge seemed extra annoyed with him for not taking responsibility for what he did. Story 23. There was this lady who got into a small car accident in a casino parking lot. She backed her car out of a parking spot and bumped into a truck. It wasn't a big crash, just a little bump. The truck driver said something interesting happened after that. He told us the lady parked her car and went into the casino for a few hours. But when we asked the lady what happened, she told a very different story. The lady said she was so hurt from the accident that she went straight home and then to the hospital. This didn't match up with what the truck driver said, so we knew something wasn't right. I had an idea. I asked the lady if she went to the casino a lot, and if she had one of those special cards that casinos give to regular players. She got all excited and said, "Oh yes! I have a gold status card." She even showed it to me. That's when I knew I could find out the truth. I asked the casino to give me the records from her rewards card, and guess what? Those records showed that she had been playing slot machines for hours after the accident. This meant the lady wasn't telling the truth about being hurt and going to the hospital right away. Instead, she stayed at the casino having fun and gambling. Story 24. There was this guy whose house burned down because of an explosion. It happened in the big tank that held the oil used to heat his home. It was pretty clear that the company that took care of the oil tank had messed up. Now you'd think the guy's home insurance would pay for the damage, right? Well, they didn't want to. Even though this was a really good insurance company, they tried to get out of paying by using a tricky rule in the policy. The insurance folks said they would pay if the heater caused the problem, but not if it was the oil tank. They were trying to say the tank wasn't part of the heating system, which doesn't make much sense if you think about it. So the poor guy whose house burned down was told he wouldn't get the $1.2 million he needed to rebuild. That's when I got involved to help him. I started asking questions to the person from the insurance company who decided not to pay. I wanted to know why she thought the oil tank wasn't part of the heating system. She said she listened to an expert who was supposed to be an engineer. But here's the funny part. I had already checked out this so-called expert. Turns out he wasn't an engineer at all. He had never studied engineering or worked as one. Now, usually when you sue someone, you have to pay for your own lawyer. But there's a special rule for insurance companies. If they refuse to pay when they should have, they might have to pay for your lawyer too. Because the insurance company relied on someone who wasn't really an expert, the judge decided they hadn't been fair. So not only did they have to pay the $1.2 million for the house, but they also had to pay an extra $500,000 for the lawyer fees. In the end, the guy got the money to rebuild his house, and the insurance company learned an expensive lesson about being honest and fair with their customers. Story 25. There was this person who said they had broken their arm. They were suing someone over it and had an X-ray to prove it. But something about the whole thing seemed fishy to me. I work at a big hospital that also teaches medical students. Part of my job is to look into cases like this one. As I was checking out the details, I noticed that the dates on the X-ray didn't quite add up. It was like trying to solve a puzzle, and some pieces just weren't fitting right. So I started digging deeper. I looked into who this person was and what they did for a living. And that's when I found out something really interesting. The person suing was actually an X-ray technician at another hospital. Now, why is that such a big deal? Well, X-ray technicians are the people who take X-rays all day long. They know how to use the machines, and they understand how X-rays work. This meant that our plaintiff had all the knowledge and tools to fake an X-ray if they wanted to. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. The weird dates, the X-ray that seemed off, it all pointed to one thing. This person might have made a fake X-ray to pretend they had a broken arm when they really didn't. Once we figured this out, the case was pretty much over. It's really hard to win a lawsuit when you're caught trying to trick everyone with fake evidence, especially when the fake evidence is something you're supposed to be an expert in. Story 26. There was this guy who built fancy houses for a living. He made a deal with someone to build their dream home for a set price. But after the house was done, the builder said he'd used way more stuff and worked much harder than he thought he would. So he wanted more money. Now I was asking this builder questions in court about how he and the homeowner agreed on the price. That's when something crazy happened. The builder just blurted out that he knew from the start he couldn't actually build the house for the price he promised. As soon as he said that, everyone in the room got super alert. My boss and I both looked up in surprise, and the other lawyer looked like he might be sick. I started asking more questions. Did you tell the homeowner you could build it for that price? Yes, he said. But you knew that wasn't true? Yes, he admitted. And you knew the homeowner was counting on that price being real? Yes, he said again. Would the homeowner have signed the contract if they knew the real price? No, he confessed. Did you also tell the bank that would lend the money that you could do it for that price? Yes, he said. And the bank only agreed to lend the money because of that price? Yes, he admitted one last time. What the builder didn't realize was that he had just admitted to a big legal no-no called fraudulent inducement. That's a fancy way of saying he tricked the homeowner into signing the contract by lying about the price. Because of what he said in those few minutes, the builder lost the case big time. Not only did he not get the extra money he wanted, but he also had to pay a lot more as punishment for being dishonest.